Hi everybody, it's Richard here again. It's Sunday morning and this is my last day off from work. I'm back to work again tonight. I'm one of these horrible night shift workers. So I thought I would do a quick video before I went to get some sleep, before I went back to bed actually. I didn't really know what video to do, but then I decided let's do 10 albums by artists that very rarely get mentioned in the vinyl community, 10 artists that I really like. And so let's start. And the first one, he's never mentioned, and he's a fantastic singer-songwriter, and if you actually look at the amount of hits he's had or he's written for other people, you will go, oh my god, this guy, he's very prolific. Albert Hammond. Albert Hammond had one UK hit in 1973, and that was the Free Electric Band. That album itself is a fantastic album. This is my personal favourite album. There's even a couple of songs here that other people have covered. This is 99 Miles from LA, which was covered by Art Garfunkel, and the most famous song of this is To All the Girls I've Loved Before, which was covered by Julio Iglesias and Willie Nelson. But this guy's had about a half a dozen, 6, 7, 8 solo albums, but he's also written so many other hits. It's unbelievable. The Air That I Breathe that the Hollies got to number 2 with is his song. When I Need You, Leo Sayer, is his song. One Moment in Time, Whitney Houston, is his song. When You Tell Me That You Love Me, Diana Ross, is his song. And the other one is Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, that was Starship #1. It's his song. So he has written an awful lot of songs, like even that Gimme Dat Ding by the Pipkins is his song. So he's excellent songwriter, excellent singer. I saw him live a couple of years ago. It was such a gentleman. He came out under the crowd. We were all sitting on seats because that's the way it is nowadays, and he went around shaking everybody's hand, including mine. So Albert Hammond, British born and brought up in Gibraltar, or was it the other way around? Not too sure. But he's my #1 pick. Another band who were very successful in the early 70s, don't really get the recognition. They don't really fall into glam rock, but after a while they turn towards that genre, and that is Mungo Jerry. This is a fantastic album. This is such a feel-good album. This is a foot stomp album. There's kazoos in it. It's just a really feel good album. Songs on here include an awesome version of San Francisco Bay Blues. If you hear this version, no other version you'll want to hear again. The song Maggie is great. Peace in the Country. Sad Eyed Joe. This is a really strong. This is their best album. It's their debut album. Their second album, Electronically Tested, was more of the same, but after that they became a little bit more rockier. There's no drums, I don't think, on this album at all. I'm not 100% sure, but they became more rock and roll based, and things like Alright, Alright, Alright and Long Legged Woman Dressed in Black became sort of glam favourites. But Ray Dorset, lead singer, obviously they had a huge hit within the Summertime, which was around the same time as this album, but it wasn't put on the album, it was put on the next album. And then a #1 hit with Baby Jump as well, which I don't know if I got to #1 because it's one of their weaker songs. But Mungo Jerry, honestly, if you ever see this first album, play it, you will play it again. This is a come-to album whenever you're feeling a wee bit down in the dumps. This is brilliant. Next up, talking about rock and roll, rockabilly. Might be a guilty pleasure for me, but I think they're really good at what they do. and that's Matchbox. Matchbox had a few hits in the early 80s with things like, what they have with Over the Rainbow, When You Ask About Love, and what's the name of the one, Midnight Dynamos. This was their third album, I believe, and this was the one that broke them with the fantastic Rockabilly Rebel. Everyone likes Rockabilly Rebel. You can't not like Rockabilly Rebel. And the next single, Buzz Buzz a Diddle It, I know, but it's rock and roll, it's rockabilly, and it's really, really well played. Love them, got most of their albums. Again, feel good. And nobody ever seems to remember them or mention them, or maybe they just dismiss them as bargain bin fodder. I don't know, but honestly, check this album out, it's magnificent. Okay, a band, or a group I should say, not so much a band, who I loved in the 70s. Didn't really get any of the records, but I always liked their singles. But they obviously came up from the 50s and through the 60s, and I think, if you look at on Wikipedia, past members, there's something like 60 to 80 different past members, and there's different formations of the group. And I do love the 60s and the 70s versions, and that is the Drifters. I love this album. This is their first album, On Bell, from 1973, and the first single to be released off this is a magnificent version of Paul McCartney's Every Night. They do a wonderful version of You've Got Your Troubles, but the highlight on this is their version of Sweet Caroline, the Neil Diamond song. Again, it's easy listening. You'll probably get this in a bargain bin as well. But, you know, I just love the Drifters. I love them throughout the 60s and throughout the 70s. And I don't think they've actually released anything from the mid-70s, but they're still going strong, albeit not a single member, original member. I think they're all in their 20s now, the members of the Drifters, so it's now turned into like a corporate name rather than a band. But still, the Drifters, I love them, absolutely adore them. Next up is a guy part of the Stiff movement, very rarely gets mentioned. Elvis Costello gets mentioned, Ian Dury gets mentioned, Nick Lowe gets mentioned. Nobody seems to mention Reckless Eric. Yes, his vocals are a bit hard to take at times. They are very distinctive. This here is actually a double album. The first album is his new album, which was in 1980, and the second album was like a best of album to try and help sell this. Both LPs in this are really, really strong. Obviously most people will go for the second album with songs like I'd Go the Whole Wide World to Find Her, which was covered by the Proclaimers, Take the Cash, Reconnais Cherie, Veronica, and Hit and Miss Judy, which is one of the catchiest songs you'll ever hear. But Reckless Eric, yes, I think he's released a couple of albums in the 2000s which I haven't heard, but before this came out he had two previous ones which are both very, very strong albums, but he seemed to disappear for a long time after this. But yeah, Reckless Eric deserves a mention. Okay, we're going up into the 2013. My God, I've got an album from a band from the 21st century, but this band for me is awesome, and that's Vampire Weekend. This is their third album, probably their best album. I don't know really how to describe them. I would maybe, they have a slight 80s sound, mix some of the Talking Heads with a bit of Paul Simon's Graceland, and add in a huge big dollop of melody, and you've got this band. They have a new album coming out, I think it's next month, which I cannot wait. It's actually a double album. They've had 3 albums so far, this will be their 4th. This album here is probably their best, although it was the second album, Contra, that got me into them. I just absolutely adore these guys, and I just can't wait for the new album. and it's refreshing to see a piece of new music on the VC. Now, a group that a lot of people probably would never have heard of, and I bought this album on the strength of one song which I had as a kid as a single. It's one of the first singles I've ever bought, and that is, the song was called Softly Whispering I Love You, and it's by The Congregation. I know nothing about these guys at all. Brian Keith and Alan Parker are the two fellas. He's got a very distinctive voice as well. I think it's Brian Keith that does the singing. This is called The English Congregation. This is a US copy, but in the UK they were just known as a Congregation. And basically they just do cover versions of songs, but they do it in their own style, and there's almost like a big choir behind them. I love it. Like the title track, Softly Whispering I Love You, is one of my favourite songs of all time. And it was covered actually very well by Paul Young in the early 90s or late 80s. But there's so many beautiful songs. They do a good version of Like to Teach the World to Sing. And another of my favourite songs, A Lover's Concerto, which is beautiful, and a good version of Morning is Broken. It's very good, easy listening music. They've only had 2 albums, and I think they're easy enough to get. They're not that expensive. But yeah, The Congregation. If you ever see this, I urge you, pick it up. Talking about A Lover's Concerto, it also features on this album by this American group, who would be my favourite female group of all time. I just, they're brilliant. They're like the female Beatles, although they didn't write their songs, and that's the Supremes. Every household must have a greatest hits by the Supremes, because their run of singles is untouchable. Their albums are pretty good too. This is I Hear a Symphony with a song, the title song, which is magnificent. Also has My World is Empty Without You, and they do actually a very nice version of Yesterday on this as well. Again, it's easy listening, but there's a spark to the Supremes that a lot of girl groups and other groups just did not have. So yeah, the Supremes, love them. Last 2 I tend to group together because they were at the end of glam rock. And this one here is Cockney Rebel, or Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel. The band was just Cockney Rebel at the time, and this album is called The Human Menagerie. Features their epic first single, Sebastian, which didn't chart. But this album itself is probably their most consistent LP, their very first one. Wonderful tracks like What Ruthie Said and Loretta's Tale. And then you have the big opus at the end, Death Trip. Steve Harley, his voice, can be a bit like Marmite as well. But, there's no denying he was a good songwriter, and he had a good string of albums in the mid-70s. This from 1973, I think is their best, and it's the best place to start. And lastly, one of the greatest groups of all time, believe it or not, in my book, and I know that Canadian Stuff Muffin thinks the same, and this is one of the best albums of all time. This is my favourite album from 1975. This is Sparks and Discreet. This album is so varied, it makes the White Album look monotonous. Honestly, it's so many different styles of music in this, and it all works. It is produced by Tony Visconti. It came off the back of their 2 big hit albums, Kimono My House and Propaganda, which both sounded very similar to each other. This sounds nothing like that. You've got the almost stomping march of Hospitality on Parade. The swinging of Get in the Swing, and the 1930s sounding, or is it 40s or is it 20s, I'm not sure, of Looks. You've almost got the pre-punk of In the Future, and then you've got such weird songs like Under the Table with Her, which is just Russell Miles singing behind a violin playing in the background, and the lyrics by Ron Mail are hilarious. This is a fantastic LP, and again, Sparks are one of my favourite because they didn't sit rest on their laurels. They changed all the time. Sometimes not for the best, sometimes for the best, but at least they changed. So that's Sparks and Discreet, and those are my 10 picks for albums that just on artists that don't really get that much of a mention. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm sure I will talk to you all very soon. Okay, bye bye.